Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. The Hamas leader's sons, three sons and two of his grandkids were killed today by Israeli missile strike. Now, knowing Hamas and their tactics of fighting, they're very dirty fighters. They're not just like how ISIS was a dirty fighter, just like how Taliban and Al Qaeda, they're all dirty fighters. I mean, I'm not taking the Israeli side either, but their tactics are definitely dirty, and they don't do anything. Uh, they what's the word I'm looking? They like to torture. Let's read about this. Israel Gaza war. Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh says three sons killed in airstrike. So um, let's see. Haniyeh told the broadcast Al Jazeera that three sons, Hazem, Amir, and Muhammad, had remained in Gaza during the war. A statement from Hamas later said four of Haniyeh's grandchildren, Mona, Amal, Khalid, and Razan, were among those killed. Oh, so four. Among those killed in what they called the treacherous and cowardly strike. Haniyeh said he heard the news as he was visiting wounded Palestinians who had been taken for treatment to the Qatari capital, Doha, which is where the Hamas leader lives. Did you hear the Hamas leader lives in Doha, Qatar, not in Palestine? The enemy will be delusional if it thinks that targeting my sons at the climax of the ceasefire negotiations and before the movement sends its and negotiations and before the movement sends its response will push Hamas to change its position, he told Al Jazeera. In comments reported on Hamas's Telegram channel, he thanked God for the honor best owed on him by what he called the martyrdom of his children and grandchildren. So, he is going to celebrate this. He is going to turn this into the biggest propaganda of Hamas's image. So basically, anything, just like how George Floyd was turned into a martyrdom, he's going to do the same thing. He's going to use this as a propaganda machine to basically promote his sons and his grandchildren's death into a weapon to basically promote their act and how they're going to retaliate. Israel's military said it had eliminated three Hamas military wing operatives in the central Gaza Strip, adding that they were the sons of Ismail Haniyeh. The statement did not mention the reported death of Haniyeh's grandchildren. As international pressure to reach a ceasefire deal grows, U.S. President Joe Biden has sent the head of the CIA, William Burns, for the latest round of talks in Cairo. The latest proposal, which Hamas says it is analyzing, reportedly includes the release of 40 Israeli hostages being held in Gaza in return for 900 Palestinians from Israeli jails. So this is the same tactic that Taliban was using with the United States. For three U.S. Hostages, you need to release everybody in Guantanamo. Haniyeh is widely considered Hamas's overall leader and has been a prominent member of the movement since 1980. He was elected head of Hamas Political Bureau in 2017, and the U.S. Department of State designated him a terrorist in 2018. So, the question lies here of how United States is willing to deal with a terrorist group such as Hamas to initiate a ceasefire. Of course, they're going to pressure Israel to ceasefire, but what about Hamas? How are they going to guarantee that Hamas is not going to, how Hamas is going to basically continue the ceasefire? They're not. They're not. They obviously have broken ceasefire many times. So I think Israel at this point is basically doing the same thing. They're like, oh yeah, we'll do ceasefire for like 5 minutes, but we're not going to hold to it. And with that being said, uh, the pro-Palestinians in the United States will always push for destruction, and soon things will be burning down. But you guys have to understand how foreign politics works, right? Hamas is backed by Iran. If you haven't noticed, I'm sure you know by now that Iran got a bunch of money from the Biden administration released to them. So they said it hasn't been released yet, but it was released to them. And because the money has been released, Iran has budgeted to fund its proxies. One of its proxies is Hamas. Now, the head of the snake, which is being the Hamas leader, Mr. Haniyeh, or Haniyeh, doesn't even live in Palestine. He lives in Qatar, right? In Doha. That's where he lives. Because he is protected in Doha. No one can get to him. And Iranian operatives are in Doha. They're mostly in Arab countries. So with tension of the anti-West ideology grows in the Middle East, which has been growing a lot, even now, even more now. What happens is most of these leaders are being more protected by the Arab countries, because now Israel is becoming the main target. And the more the West gets involved with these destructive foreign policies, which mostly Democrats have issued and have endorsed, what happens is the Middle East becomes destabilized, right? So as you've seen from the 1980s, it started out with Iran, how they destabilized Iran by removing Shah from power. And then once that happened, it immediately created this chaotic momentum between Iran and Iraq. So there was an 80 years of war between Iran and Iraq, which I lived through. And then immediately, Afghanistan was invaded by Russia, which created another chaos where United States had to come in and basically place Taliban to fight the Soviets, which later turned into Taliban turning against the United States, who was funding them, and become the proxies of turning Afghanistan into an Islamic state. And then, fast forward to 2001, September 11th, which Saudi individuals, so-called, flew the planes into the World Trade Center. And then, I was about to say Obama. Osama was titled as the terrorist behind the attack, which also a Saudi millionaire led U.S. to invade Afghanistan. And then Democrats, they're like, Iraq and Saddam has weapons of mass destruction, which caused a 20-year war in Iraq. And then the Clinton came in, where she was the Secretary of State, because she had to come in and disrupt Libya because of Gaddafi. So because of her work, Gaddafi was killed. So if you see the pattern here, it was all mostly the United States government creating all these destructions, and it was mostly Democrats who created all this destruction. Starting with Jimmy Carter, and now everything got destabilized in Middle East, but now they are regrouping because they were not expecting the Russian war to start, which they created as well, pushing Ukraine into NATO, trying to push Ukraine to NATO, become a NATO member. So combine all this stuff, And now Iran has been a common enemy of United States and Israel, because as soon as Khomeini came into power, death to America, death to Israel chants were starting to begin. And for up until now, okay, up until now, 45 years later, it's still the same chants, right? Um, so now Iran has a common enemy, which is United States and Europe. Most of the Arab countries, Iraq, Libya, Syria, these are all, I forgot to mention Syria, by the way. These are all common enemies of the Arab nations against the West. And they definitely don't like Israel, okay? Because Israel to them has turned into the poison that they're trying to get rid of, because of how much they have backing from the US and the Western world. And they're creating so much destructions, in their eyes. And because of the continuous war between Hamas, between Israel, and Hezbollah, all this stuff, and the Houthis, they're sort of getting involved. But because of all these conflicts, there will never be peace in the Middle East. Even if you take Israel out of it, the Sunnis and the Shias always will have conflict between one another. But at this point, they are united because they have a common enemy, which is Israel, which is the West. And so this kind of stuff, when Israel goes and takes out the three sons and the four grandkids of a Hamas leader, they just created more propaganda, because the terrorist groups always thrive on propaganda. If you remember the ISIS times, when ISIS was in place, that is how they thrived on recruiting people on the internet, by providing propaganda, constant propaganda. And they're good at it. I lived through it. Trust me, I know how propaganda works. I've lived it. I could smell it a mile away. I know what kind of images they use. I know what kind of languages they use, and I know what kind of songs they use. They bring in people who have very, very good soothing voices to sing these songs that are very they're pro-Islam and anti-West. More, it's crazy. All right, so people get enticed. People get they play with people's feelings, right? And I have always said that once you put fear in people's hearts, once you start playing with their feelings, people can switch like this, right? Once they have that control over people, it's easy to get people to do anything they want, right? For example, COVID was the best thing. They put fear in people's hearts, and that's how the mass was controlled. ISIS did the same thing. They put fear in people's heart. That's how mass was controlled. So, do with this what you will. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments down below. Most importantly, if you have not subscribed to this channel, please subscribe to this channel, and share this with your friends. Peace out.